Welcome back to Self-Care in the City. This is the space where we go behind the scenes and we gather the insights, the real stories, and the blueprints from some of the UK wellness founders that I find incredible and that you genuinely need to watch. It's great because you will get to see how they're actually helping build healthier, happier lives for people. Because let's be honest, in London especially, it's fast, it's full on. And sometimes you don't even realize how overwhelmed you are until your body just starts, whether it's whispering or shouting, for you to slow down. And that's exactly why I think these kind of conversations matter. And so if you're here, this is how I do it. I keep things simple, but really real. We move through a 3-2-1 format. 3 lessons or influences that help us understand what's really going on beneath the surface, 2 mindset shifts from our lovely guest that can generally change how we see ourselves, and 1 practical tool that you can actually take away and use in your life. So by the end of this, you're not just inspired. I hope you got something you can actually do, because we hear the words so often, self-care all the time, right? If we're going to be honest, a lot of it can feel a bit surface level, face mask, baths, taking a break. And yet people are still so anxious and still burnt out and still feeling a bit disconnected from themselves. So today we're going a little deeper. I'm joined by the lovely Lauren Parmar, founder of MOOD Ldn. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Chantel.
Welcome.
How are you?
Lauren creates spaces, tools, and conversations that actually meet people where they are emotionally, mentally, and honestly. I have loved being on her program, and I just feel it's so human, it's so relatable. And so, yeah, I'm just so happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, and I love having you in our community. So,
Yay. So I want to start, before we get into any of the questions, to understand a little bit more about you and who you are and where you've come from and how you developed MOOD Ldn. Can you take us back? Is that all right?
yes, I would love to take you back. So, I mean, I've had a very squiggly career, Chantel. I started my career as an actor in my sort of 20s, and that was always my like childhood passion. That was my lifelong dream. I went to drama school, and I was like, this is it. I'm going to make it as an actor in London. And I was so laser focused on that. I never really had a sort of plan B. I was like, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But of course, the reality of it humbles you very quickly because it's so hard. It's so competitive. And just a really relentless process of like auditioning and getting rejected again and again. And so I did that kind of on and off for 7 years. And it never really kind of took off in the way that I wanted it to take off. So by the end of that, I was just completely burnt out and sick of it. And I felt so low in my confidence. I felt really disconnected from myself and like who I was. And it was a really painful decision to like move away from that career.
Oh, wow.
And it kind of led to like a full-blown identity crisis, because I think we attach so much of ourselves to our jobs, to our job titles, our careers, the companies we work for. And so if you go through a big transition and a pivot and you're like, actually, I don't want to do this anymore. For me, I was like, well, if I'm not Lauren the actor, then who the hell am I? And so that really kind of started opening up some quite like existential questions for me. And this was sort of like pre-pandemic times. And at this time, I kind of pivoted into a career in production in advertising. And that was great for a while. And I was like, okay, this is good. I like this. Maybe I'll go behind the scenes in a similar industry. And for a while, that was kind of working well until it wasn't. And I just had this sense of like, is this it? Like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, I couldn't help but feel there was more that I had to give, to share, to express. But I didn't really know how to, I didn't really know what that was or how to fulfill it. And so I was having all these questions about who am I? What am I doing? And I spent a long time trying to figure that out, to be honest, on my own, you know, and I was kind of looking everywhere outside of myself for answers and kind of wanting someone else to just tell me what to do. I'd be like, disempowering myself all the time, trying to get bosses or friends or mentors, tell me what to do, what should I do?
Mm.
And then, of course, when someone gives you advice, I'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. That's not the right thing. Because it has to come from you, right? And
Yes.
so the only thing that ever kind of changed for me is like, when I ran out of places to look, I got really into meditation. I was like, okay, maybe I need to actually go in. You know, maybe the answers aren't out there. Maybe they're in me.
Yeah.
And so I started developing like a meditation practice. I started reading about meditation. I was meditating for like an hour every single day, like, you know, doing like audio meditations, listening to podcasts, just really soaking it up. And for a while, I didn't really know what I was kind of looking for. But after a while, I started to feel the shift. I started to feel different. I started to feel calmer. I started to feel less anxious. And what was interesting is clarity started to emerge. I started to get new ideas about what I wanted to do, how I wanted to express myself. And I was also kind of really into yoga at this time. And it was like the start of like a real spiritual journey for me that really changed my life in an amazing way. And I started to like feel like myself again for the first time in a really long time. I started to rebuild my confidence.
Yeah.
I just thought, wow, why are more people not doing this? Like, why do not more people know about this? Because I know people know that we should be meditating, but I don't believe that many people are actually doing it
Yeah.
with consistency. And it's the consistency that really makes it a really powerful practice, in my opinion. So sorry, that was a very long-winded answer, but it all kind of started from there, really.
And I think one thing that stuck out from what you've just said is that when you have clarity, that gives you such peace sometimes in just knowing and have that sense of calmness that it brings to your life when you have that clarity. I've had that when I started doing this work. And so I think for a lot of people, it's just a lot of the jumble and the noise that they have in their mind that just needs to be quietened down so that they can really see exactly what it is that should be their path, so to speak. So just, you said that so beautifully, and I just got that so clearly from.
I think it's so important. This is why it's step one of the mood method. You know, it's the number one thing that we work on when people come into mood. It's like clarifying the vision. What is it we want? Where do we want to go? And I think the challenge for most people is, yeah, it's like the mental clutter. It's the overwhelm when we're doing so much. It's really hard to sometimes think long term when we're just trying to survive. You know, we're in this survival mode living in London. But I think the other challenge, and it was the challenge for me, is people say to me all the time, I just don't know what I want. I don't know what I want, Lauren.
Yeah.
And I was saying this as well. I don't know what I want. But what I realize now is I did kind of know. It was just that negative voice in my head. It was that inner critic that was so loud, telling me all of these stories like, that's not possible for you. You can't do that. How are you going to make that happen? And to the point where it was making me just not even believe that the ideas that I had were kind of viable. Like, I remember having this idea of like, I had this vision of like being on retreats and hosting retreats, but I was like, what would I be doing on a retreat? You know, I don't have any skills to facilitate a retreat. So I would just like put it to the back of my mind. I was just telling myself that it's not possible. And of course, now this year I'm about to host my 4th retreat. So, you know, to summarize that, I just think all the things that we want, you know, the ideas are all there. We just need to sometimes trust ourselves and cultivate this practice of trusting ourselves. And it's all about just taking one step in front of the other, you know.
Yeah.
Something I always say is we don't need to have the whole plan figured out.
Yep.
Take the first step, and very often the next step will reveal itself to us. And that's certainly been the case in my journey.
I absolutely 1000% agree and believe exactly that. I think that what you say resonates, and I hope a lot of our listeners are hearing this and thinking, hey, maybe I just need to take that first step. So thank you, Lauren, just for explaining that alone is such gold for some people. So let's dig in then. Let's get a little bit deeper then with Lauren here.
Indeed. Let's go.
But we're going to start with lessons or influences that perhaps have really resonated with you that you can share with us, something that things that you feel would really benefit our listeners from the work that you do. And one of them is actually and it's kind of along the same lines of what we kind of been talking about. What actually happens when we ignore our emotions for too long? Because I think a lot of us do this without even realizing it.
Mm. Oh, yeah, I think you're completely right. I think so many of us are really dysregulated. We don't know how to regulate our nervous systems. We've never been taught that. Most people, I think. I was certainly never taught that until I, started developing these practices, and I didn't really even understand like what's my nervous system. What does it mean to be dysregulated? But what I know now is, I think, especially in London, when you were explaining it earlier, it was making me think, yeah, London is fast and furious. Like, it is furious.
It's
It's
crazy.
like this unrelenting pressure. And so I think we become accustomed to living life in survival mode.
Yeah.
And the problem is that can almost feel addictive, because if survival mode, if fight or flight is all you've ever known, that's what the subconscious mind starts to register as safe.
Mm.
So anything away from that, when we learn to regulate ourselves, or when we learn to move more intentionally towards our goals, maybe that feels really scary to the subconscious
Yeah.
because it's not used to it. And so many people will start a few steps on the journey, and then they they get a bit scared, and then they kind of backtrack. And that's why sometimes it can feel really hard to like make these transformative changes and like go through a big pivot. But what I've really learned is, it's like small steps with consistency. It's like the little reps that you do, maybe you can't meditate for an hour a day. Maybe you can do 5 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And if you just do 5 minutes on one day, you probably will feel a little bit calmer, but it's the compounding effect of doing these things for a long time that I think makes a massive difference. And I think that to go back to your original question, the cost of not doing that, of like ignoring our emotions and suppressing it, I mean, it can be great, right? The body keeps the score. So I think very often these like the
Yeah.
stress that we're under can, manifest as like physical symptoms in the body. We're getting sick all the time, we're feeling run down, we're getting burnt out.
Yeah.
And then it's just this kind of compounding effect that we feel like we're just constantly chasing our tail. So I think finding ways to regulate, to breathe, to connect back into your body, and just doing little things every day can make a really big difference.
Huge difference, I think, for some people, because just like what you've said, people are just not aware
Yeah,
of how to change. And
yeah,
this is just a small step. So thanks for that. The next question then, as we move on, which I think is really quite interesting, is looking at why do you think so many people feel constantly overwhelmed or just slightly on edge all the time? And it could be similar to what you've just said, but I think we can go a little deeper with that one.
yeah. I mean, I think we're just completely overwhelmed and overstimulated.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
There's so much going on in the world, especially right now. It feels incredibly heavy and just painful, just to like look at the news and see what's going on. So I think there's all of that. Then people have their immediate responsibilities and all the stuff that's going on in their own personal lives, their own circle, worrying about their friends, worrying about their family, worrying about their jobs. Everything's so volatile right now. And I think with AI coming in, that's also bringing up so many questions about the future of work, and how are people going to future proof themselves when the job market is changing so rapidly, when there's so many restructures happening. We're living in a moment of real change. And I think that's really scary and really difficult to know how to navigate. But I do also think there is opportunity within that, if you kind of know where to look for it, and if you kind of gravitate and surround yourself with the right communities and mentors and teachers who can kind of like support you on that journey.
And so if you do get somewhere and you start to kind of develop, a journey for yourself, why then do some or most self-care routines just not stick? I mean, is it
Mm.
that we're doing the wrong things or approaching it the wrong way?
That is a really good question. And I think there's two main reasons why these routines don't stick. The first is that I think sometimes we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves to
Mm.
like do this 10 set morning routine, and it almost becomes like like the irony of that, I think, is so real. It's like, this is supposed to make us feel good, and then we're trying to squeeze in 15 things before like 7 a.m. Like,
Yes.
we're setting ourselves up for failure, really. And I think the more pressure we put on ourselves to do something and get it right and be this perfect version, the more we're going to resist it, right? Because then it doesn't feel
Yeah.
good. And I think the second reason why they don't stick, and this was really what I struggled with for many years, is I think a lot of people are relying on willpower, and it's almost like a sense of depriving yourself of something, or I think in some cases it's almost like a sense of punishing ourselves. We've got to go to the gym to punish our body. We've got a diet to deprive our body of food. And it's this real kind of like negative energy and like self-talk that I think we put on ourselves. And then we're sort of relying on this willpower to not do the thing or to do the thing. And I think willpower will only get you so far. I think for me, what changed the way I was approaching it, that enabled me to make self-care really sustainable in a way that has completely transformed my life, is that, one, I took the pressure off myself and I was like, what actually feels good? Like, what do I actually want to do? What do I enjoy? What nourishes me? What fills me up?
Yeah.
And it was like switching that mindset of, I'm not doing this to punish myself. I'm doing this because it makes me feel good. Yoga makes me feel so good. Moving my body makes me feel good in myself. And that's been a really powerful kind of shift that I've been through.
Mm.
And the other shift that I've made is, rather than relying on willpower, I started asking myself questions like, who is the version of me that is living the life that I really desire? Who is the version of me that I want to become?
Okay.
How is that version of me thinking? How are they feeling? What do they believe about themselves? What do they believe about the world? And I had this real realization a few years back where I was like, wow, when I imagine myself, when I go into meditation and I visualize my dream life, that version of me, she doesn't have all these unhealthy habits. She's not smoking, she's not drinking to excess, she's not punishing her body. She's treating herself well. She's treating herself by, eating nourishing foods. She does things that make her feel empowered. She moves her body regularly. And I was like, wow, I'm really not acting in accordance with how I imagine that I could be. And so the more I started connecting with this like future version of myself that I could be, the more it made it easier for me to make different choices, because I'd always be like, and I still ask myself this question all the time to this day, what would future Lauren do? What would that version of me who's living that dream life, what would she do here? What decision would she make? Would she be snoozing the alarm, or does she just get up? Is she, what choices is she making in the day? And for me, it's made it feel really easy to make healthier, more intentional choices that have had a massive ripple effect on my life.
So just thinking about that, I was just wondering, when you talk about looking at the future self and the future you, is that something everyone can easily do? Because sometimes people will be like, well, I don't know what my future me would be saying. How do they get to that point then of saying and understanding what their future self even wants if they don't even know what they want?
I think that's a great question. And I think for me, it's like, it's a practice, it
Right.
takes time. And I
Okay.
think with these, but the way I think of it is, I think a lot of us, we spend a long time living our lives unconsciously, right? Where life is just happening to us.
Yeah.
We feel like we have no control. We're just responding to the things that are happening around us. The work that we do inside Mood, as I always say, is moving to a place of conscious creation. So we're trying to take more autonomy over our lives by remembering and realizing that we have the power to choose our thoughts, to choose our feelings, and to choose our beliefs. So if we don't like the results that we're getting in our lives, we can change the way we think and feel, which will change the outcomes that we're getting. But something I always think is, if you don't know what you want, if you don't know what to visualize, if you can't picture what that dream life would look like, start with the feeling.
What do
Start
you
with
mean?
the
Yeah.
feeling of like, how do you want to feel? Maybe you don't know what your dream job is, but maybe you know that I want to do a job that feels exciting and dynamic. And I
Yes.
imagine that I'm surrounded by lots of people and I get to use my creativity and I get to express myself. Or maybe for you, it's the opposite of that. Maybe when you think of the dream, it's like, actually, it's a simpler life. And I have a slower day and it's calmer and I have time in the morning to sip my coffee and go for a walk and nothing's rushed. I think when you ask yourself those types of questions, you will instinctively know what energy you feel called to. And maybe it changes. I always think there's like seasons of life, and sometimes we're in a season of speeding up and sometimes we're in a season of slowing down. But the body has such a deep wisdom. And I think the more we can learn to tune into that through practices like meditation, through practices like breath work, through, practices like creative journaling, morning pages, or we're going to get comfortable and familiar and strengthen that muscle of being able to really tune into our intuition and listen to that inner guidance that is always there for us.
I hope listeners, I hope you just listen to that, because that was so, so simply true. Just listening and thinking about how you want to feel, that's the key. And that will help you kind of slowly progress, move forward. But then my next question under your insights then is, what shifts when someone stops trying to fix themselves? Shifts.
I think the idea that we have to fix ourselves just implies that there's something wrong with us, right? And I think already we're like, again, putting these negative kind of expectations on ourselves.
Yep.
And I think we're all perfectly imperfect, flawed human beings, right? But I don't think anyone needs to be fixed. I think it's about learning to just truly love the version of yourself that you are. And it sounds like a contradiction in what I said previously, the changing the way you see yourself. I call it creating a new self-concept, creating a new idea about who you are. Something I always say is, it's not necessarily about becoming someone you're not. It's about returning to the most powerful version of who you already are. Before the world taught you to shrink yourself, that you're not good enough, that you need to minimize yourself. It's like everything we need is within us. And we're born as these like open vessels for creativity, for love, for care, for kindness, for community. And it's just the conditioning and the things that happen to us along the way that sort of like knock us off course. So I really see it as like a process of, coming back to that core of us. And I think the illusion of separation is like one of the biggest illusions that we've all kind of bought into. It's this idea that we have to chase things outside of ourselves. When I'm making X amount of money, then I'll feel good.
Yeah.
When I have this job title, then I'll feel happy, then I'll be satisfied. And I think so often we chase and strive after these goals and we get them. And I see this a lot in the coaching space. People achieve the goal they've been working towards their whole life, and then they feel completely flat and empty and like dead inside. And it doesn't give them the feeling that they thought they were going to get. And I think that's because you're not actually chasing the thing. It's the feeling that we think having that thing will give us.
Yeah.
And there's an amazing book by Jon Kabat-Zinn, I don't know if you've read it, called Wherever You Go, There You Are.
No.
The whole sentiment is like, you can change your job, you can change your relationship, you can change your hair, you can move countries, you can change everything about your life, but wherever you go, there you are. So unless we can learn to find love and peace within ourselves and just accept ourselves just as we are, we're always going to be in this place of lack. But I think, everything we want and need is here. It's in the body, it's in the breath, and we are always just one breath away from a completely different experience of life.
Wow, that's really, really powerful, because I think so many people feel like they're a problem to solve, and actually accepting themselves as they are is a beautiful thing.
It really is. And I think it has a profound ripple effect. I think often we're taught that it's selfish to, look after ourselves and prioritize ourselves. But that old saying of like, you can't pour from an empty cup, I think rings
Yeah.
so true. And I honestly think the best thing we can do for our loved ones is to love ourselves and look after ourselves. You know, what a great gift for your loved ones to know that you're okay and that they don't need to worry about you. Like, I think that is such a beautiful thing that we can do, and I think it inspires other people and gives other people permission that it's okay to take some time for yourself and to put yourself first sometimes.
Yeah, beautiful, beautifully said. So we're going to move into the practical tool. For someone listening right now, how can they support themselves on both the good days and the difficult days? I mean, something simple but actually effective that they can start with.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think the first thing is, I would always say consistency beats intensity. So it doesn't have to be extreme. You don't have to do all these 15 steps. Maybe it's just finding one thing
Yeah.
that you like, that you feel good about. And yeah, not making it or seeing it as a punishment. And I think just trusting that self-care, these practices, it looks and feels different for everyone. You know, what feels good for you might feel different to might feel good it might feel different for someone else, but
Mm,
maybe it's like going for a walk. That's
mm,
your thing. I'm gonna First thing in the morning, I'm gonna go for a walk. Maybe it's 5 minutes of journaling.
mm,
Maybe it's finding an online meditation and doing 5 minutes of that.
mm.
Whatever it is,
Yeah.
explore, experiment, take the pressure off, have fun with it. And, you know, maybe just try something every day for a week. Did I like that? Do I feel better? Yes. Okay, great. Maybe I'll do more of that. Maybe that one didn't work for me. Okay, so maybe I'll try something else. But it really is just trusting that we don't always see the impact of these things in the moment. You know, I think especially with like meditation, we don't always see the transformative effects on day one, on day two. But we have the rest of our life to do our life's work, and it's a short life, but it's also a long life. So the every single little choice that you make, it will all add up, and it will, I think there's an act of trusting
Mm.
that it will lead you to a very different destination in the long run if you just find what works and just keep going with it.
You know, what I really love about what you're saying is that it takes the pressure off, because I think a lot of people feel like they're getting it wrong, like they're not doing wellness properly. And actually, it's not about doing more. Just like you said, it's about understanding yourself better. Um,
Totally. And actually, I would say often it's about doing less, you know,
yeah.
like a question I ask people a lot is, what can you let go of in order to
Mhm.
focus on the thing that really matters to you?
Oh,
Because
wow.
we all are in this state of like feeling like we have to do it all, you know? And the reality is we just can't. And something that my coach says to me, I think I mentioned this on the meditation the other morning, is like, sometimes you've got to just let fires burn, you
Yeah.
know, accept that you can't do it all at once, at one time. So sometimes we just got to pick which fires we're going to let burn so that we can focus on the things that are really important for us in that moment.
Mm.
And again, just trust that it's all cyclical, it's all seasonal.
Well, I feel like I've just got an amazing coaching session from you today. So this has been amazing, Lauren. This has just been so grounding, like really grounding conversation. Honestly, I feel like people are going to listen to this and just feel seen. Thank you
So,
so, so much for sharing your perspective. Where can people find you, connect with you, and explore more of your work?
oh, great question. So people can find us. We're on Instagram. So it's at moodldn.co, or my personal Instagram is lauren.parmar, Parmar. And you can find us on our website, moodlondon.co. And I'd be very happy to offer a free 7-day access to our meditation membership for any
Ooh,
listeners who are
yes.
curious about these practices, who want to explore. Because I think another thing that we haven't really talked about is like, you don't have to do it alone. And I think it becomes so much easier to develop these rituals and these habits that are so powerful and transformative when you're surrounded by an amazing community of like minded people who all come together to work on it together. And it's a space to really be witnessed, to be seen, to share your fears, but also your ideas, and just have the power of this community supporting you and holding you accountable as you move forwards. And that's really been my whole vision behind Mood, is to create a space where we don't have to do it alone, where it becomes easy and fun, hopefully, to build our dreams and move into greater alignment with who we really are and what we really want.
And I think that's just what a lot of people are looking for, just community of like-mindedness, where people who want to improve themselves, people who want to do better, are surrounded by other people, and that just amplifies how perhaps quickly you do kind of improve in your life. And so myself joining Mood London in your meditations has just been so phenomenal for me personally. And so I just speak to everyone. Look, people, I think this is something that you should even just explore. Take advantage of that free 7 days. I mean, I would for sure. Because you might just leave there saying, oh, wait a second, this really resonates with me. This is something that actually I need in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So to everyone listening, if something in this conversation did resonate with you, just take that as your sign to slow down a little and check in with yourself today. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to start paying attention. And I will see you all next time. Same space, same energy, self-care in the city.
Thank you so much, Chantal. So great to be here. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.